broke. Hello.
Hey.
Hello, everybody. Welcome to Vietnam. A couple of things I want to say to you before we start saying hellos. Apologies for the kind of confusion over the time today. The clocks went forward in the US and back in Australia.
So they go forward in the UK as well?
Yes.
Just something happened in the
yes.
UK.
So
And we didn't know any of these things when we scheduled the live. So anyway.
So as always,
we're an hour late or an hour early or
something.
So
some people are getting an hour earlier, some people are getting an hour later, but
for us we arrive on time.
Because Vietnam, nothing changed.
Yeah, nothing changes.
It all stays exactly. So anyway, listen, welcome to all of you. We have a lot of you watching already. We are.
Maybe if you angle your head in a certain, it makes you look like you've got like some weird eyes from the light.
Oh yeah, that's a bit weird, isn't it? It's like hypnotized. Anyway, look, I'll take the bins off, and Terysa can read the question. So listen, welcome to our live stream from Ho Chi Minh City. It is Sunday morning where we are.
This is our lovely apartment.
Our live stream from Ho Chi Minh City. It is Sunday morning where we are.
This is our lovely apartment.
We have our lovely cups of tea, and unfortunately it's too early for beer. So listen,
about like 6 hours. No, wait, 9 hours.
Okay. So listen, lots to talk to you about. Usual format for all this. We've just come from the Zoom. Lots to talk to you about. The usual format for all this. We've just come from the Zoom meeting on Patreon. So there are some questions outstanding from there. So we have said to the patrons that have kind of like come across, if we didn't get to answer those, just we'll get those answered for you here. So announcements, Terysa, what do we have to announce? What's going on? Do you want to kind of tell? So announcements, Terysa, what do we have to announce? What's going on? Do you want to kind of tell anyone anything about us, our lives? You're kind of looking at me like a rabbit in the headlights.
I am, because I don't know whether you're referring to something in particular.
Oh no, I wasn't.
Or whether you're just putting me on the spot.
I'm putting you on the spot.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, sure.
Oh, okay.
Couple of things are almost expired. Don't worry, we have the ability to renew those visas, but it has given us opportunity to. Terysa's going back to the UK at the end of next week, and she'll be gone for about a month. We have some things to sort out regarding our wedding, so we have to register the marriage with the relevant authorities. So she'll be in the UK getting that all sorted out. I will be going back to the UK for, I think, a couple of weeks. It's not absolutely certain yet. Is our lens misted up? No, I actually think it is misted up.
And maybe just give it like a little wipe.
Let me give it a little wipe.
Yeah.
Hang on, I've got a lens cuff there. I just thought I was in soft focus.
Yeah, no, that's what I actually just thought the camera was very good. No, it's the same. I think that it's because we've got some backlight.
Yeah. So so
we could spin the thing around,
no,
but then you get a lovely view of our tiny kitchen, which is such a nice background.
So yeah, we're heading back to the UK. Terysa's heading back to the UK, and she'll come back with a new visa, and then I will be heading back for a couple of weeks and come back with a new visa. So we will continue. I think there'll be a 2-week break from filming in Vietnam. We have a lot of stuff to show you still anyway. So we'll get all that done. And obviously, the other thing is that it seems at the moment pretty likely that we have a serious option of sailing the boat out of Vietnam from here, either to sail Asia and across the Indian Ocean and follow Keith and Renee, or to sail the boat to Singapore and ship her somewhere, or to, so that for that reason, we have to start thinking about bringing things back, life jackets.
Sorry, can I just interrupt? Can you can everyone let us know, apart from the blurry situation, which people are suggesting we close the curtains, which probably isn't a bad idea. But can you just let us audio, and apart from that, whether everything's okay? Because some people are saying that there's a bit of a glitchy.
Yeah, it does glitch a little bit, the YouTube. So apologies if the
we can change.
Yeah, it's not. Anyway, so yeah, look, regarding what we. Yeah, just pull the other one, darling. I think, for some reason it kind of puts a halo around my head. The angel that I clearly am. The angel that I clearly am. That's better.
Is it?
Well, it's kind of sort of. It's a little bit porno, but yeah, whatever.
I feel like it was like, the lighting is much better. Yeah, but now it feels like it's like early evening in here rather than 9 o'clock in the morning.
Welcome to Late Night Jazz with Nick and Terysa.
It's really changed the vibe.
The Duke Ellington trumpet solos from the 1950s. So the kind of like, so probably we will sail out of Vietnam.
Yeah, so I wasn't listening to what you were saying. So we're in the process of getting insurance quotes, which has been quite illuminating. We've had like wild variances in the different quotes that we've been getting.
Very high.
I think we've had 5 quotes, and there's been a huge difference between the top and the bottom one. So we're gonna, if you guys are interested in that, let us know, because we're going to be talking about that further once we have all the information.
Yeah, the insurance thing, again, it's difficult because obviously insurance is linked to the experience of the crew, where you intend to go, the value of the boat. But we do have at the moment 5 comparative quotes, and that's something that we really do want to put across.
Yeah, and how that might compare to shipping costs at the moment.
Yeah,
that's something that we are still waiting to get, so that's why we haven't.
Back to the UK, like there's a lot of things that we want to pick up that actually are pretty difficult to get. Like for instance, pilot books. Like by the time we fly back, we kind of need to know. I don't like, digital pilot books. I like to actually have a pilot book in case, the electronics goes down. Also, it's just nice to have a book. So pilot books for Thailand, for Indonesia.
When do you ever read through the pilot books?
I'm always thumbing a tome.
You literally, like, I don't think you ever touched one of our pilot books. It's like, where am I meant to be going next?
Left. Or is it port?
Yeah.
So we need to bring stuff back to the boat.
David says he's definitely interested in the insurance. Yeah, it's very well. It is. I'm finding it very interesting to see the different kind of quotes that we're getting back, and we're just gathering some more information, but we'll put that out.
Yeah, we're just waiting for to collate all this, and we'll get back to you on that. Look, I think probably that episode will be in a few months anyway, because it will tie in more with what we're doing for the launch of the boat. Yeah. Because until we know what we're doing, if we ship the boat to Europe, there is absolutely no point in having to deal with Asian insurance. So
so just to be clear, the options at the moment really are, we haven't made a decision. We're not even close to making a decision. The options are we either ship directly from Ho Chi Minh, which has always been for the last 2 years like really the only option, because we weren't able to. The only option. Now we have more options, one of which is to sail to Singapore and ship from Singapore. That can be a bit less extortionately expensive. And obviously option C is to just cruise in Southeast Asia, which, as I said, has kind of only recently come back onto the table, because now all the countries are opening up. I think Malaysia opened up 2 days ago, and that was like the last Southeast Asian country to open its borders.
Yeah.
So that's really exciting. It's nice to have options, and now we just need to make a decision.
Someone says, Mike Johnson, not sure if he's being snarky, but probably, you might get some better quotes if you had some recent experience. I think probably.
I don't think that he's being snarky. I think he's probably just saying.
Okay. Well, I guess the whole point is that we sailed like 10 months ago. That's a lot when we were in
Australia.
In Australia. But the thing about it is, not a lot of people have been able to sail worldwide anyway. It's only really just starting to come up, and coastal sailing around. The whole thing about it is that we have got 2 separate sets of quotes for just about every company, and offshore sailing is a very, very different ballpark to like coastal sailing. So they do literally differentiate between how far offshore.
And when you're submitting information for a quote, they don't ask you to like detail when you've done all your sailing. It's just a generalized what is your.
So a javelin.
If you like cross the Atlantic like 10 years ago, it doesn't matter. It's the same as last year.
Yeah. And yes, and it's true actually, because they do ask you for your experience, but they don't want the dates.
Yeah.
They're just like, what is your experience of sailing?
And we're like, well.
Because they do ask you for your experience, but they don't want the dates.
Yeah.
They're just like, what is your experience of sailing?
And we're like, well.
I paddled a coracle around the paddling. I paddled a coracle around the paddling pool. So from that point, so insurance to be dealt with. These are all things that we are just moving through and dealing with in the right order. I'll just answer some questions. There's some good questions. So I'm going to just scroll up so I don't miss them. Hello from New Zealand. Hello. I think it's about lunchtime there. So what does the timeline, this is from Jason, what does the timeline look like for hurricanes at the time of launch? He actually says at the time of lunch, but I think it means launch. Maybe it does mean like, you're like a bloody hurricane at lunchtime. You get fed late, aren't you? God.
Okay, so Southeast Asia, this part of Southeast Asia, and I shared an image, I think it was actually to our Patreon WhatsApp group, so I thought it might have been to Instagram, but no, of like all the historical hurricane, like typhoon tracks in Southeast Asia, and they tend to hit the Philippines, and then they go north to like China and Japan, and northern Vietnam, but it's very rare that they kind of track down south to where we are in Ho Chi Minh. It does happen, but they're usually not very strong. And then as soon as you get just even a little bit further south than Ho Chi Minh, you kind of not even in, there's no typhoons in that region at all. Thailand, Malaysia, Indonesia, it's not really, it's not an issue. So there's one less thing that, you have to kind of think about, at least if you're sailing around here. So, but that being said, the typhoon season, such as it is in this part of the world, is between, I think it's like May to November. So it will be when our boat is being launched. But Seawind launch boats year round in Vietnam. And as I said, you just check the forecast
before you drive. Remember wind out there. So yes.
And just also, sorry, we are, Ho Chi Minh is kind of like up, like Ho Chi Minh is kind of like up, like a delta. So we are inland. We're not like on the coast.
Yeah, it's about 40 miles to open sea from here, I think, looking at the charts.
So
miles to open sea from here, I think, looking at the charts. So look, let's get you some Ruby Rose 2 news and kind of like tell you what's going on in the factory now that we've told you vaguely what our plans are. So we go to the factory once or twice a week. We film different milestone events that are going on, but there's also a lot of technical stuff, and kind of apologies, also sorry, not sorry, because I'm just filming stuff I want to see. Genuinely, it is super interesting to watch the build of all these stuff I want to see. Genuinely, it is super interesting to watch the build of all these 3 hulls that they've got at the moment. There is a whole, every time we go there, it is busier. We went in last week and it was just crazy, crazy busy. And they've kind of got 2 teams of people in there. They've got those of them, like a whole team building the boat, and they've got another whole team just building aspects of the factory that they're just trying to catch up with. So for instance, when we went in 10 days ago, there was like a massive pile of like steel pipes and a massive pallet of 6x4 sheets of plywood, and then we went in sheets of plywood, and then we went in like last week, and they built like probably 100 meters of gantries out of this. It's like, how have you done this quickly? So basically, they are really kind of up.
But they're in there 6 days a week. I think, are they in there Sundays?
Yeah. No, they're not in there Sundays, so but they work six days a week. And they work long hours. They start at, I don't know, before we get there before 8 sometimes, and they're all going.
And honestly, like, it is so hot in that factory. Like, I don't know how they are so productive. I mean, I know that they live here and that they're used to it, but to us, like, weak foreigners, we get in there and after an hour we're like, oh, I need to lie down.
Miss Featherington, I think I'm going to swoon.
Nick's been watching Bridgerton, very excited.
You made me watch it.
I don't know if you guys have seen season 2, but Nick's like, where's the guy from season 1? Where's the main guy from season 1? You miss Simon, don't you?
No, not really.
Yeah, he does.
No,
He's like, why isn't he?
Anyway, enough of Bridgerton. We're talking about our boat.
Okay, and I've got some good questions to answer. Quite a few of you are commenting on the prospect of us sailing around Asia. Yes, super keen on that myself. But just to be clear, the reason, as I kind of touched on just before, the reason why that hasn't been an option up until now, so we haven't really just, kind of discussed it and we haven't looked into it, is because Asia has been completely closed because of COVID. So we haven't really thought about it as being a viable option, and it's only like literally in the last month that like Malaysia's borders have opened.
Malaysia opened 2 days ago, didn't it?
Yeah, exactly. But they announced it about 2-3 weeks ago. Mm-hmm. Vietnam's literally just opened its borders. Obviously, we're already here, but it does make things easier. That they're open to tourism. Indonesia is relaxing further, and like, even if the border is technically open, then is still not sometimes open to cruises because you have to arrive by plane, or you have to do hotel quarantine. And also, particularly in Indonesia, they really reduced the number of ports of entry. So even though technically the country was open, like really you couldn't get in because you couldn't get to the port of entry. There was like 2 ports of entry in the entire country. So, but now things are starting to open up and relax. And Thailand has kind of been where they were technically open, but from a cruiser's point of view, you still have to do hotel quarantine when you arrive. So it's only just now that we're starting to do research, and we're starting to kind of like things are starting to relax, and we're starting to realize that sailing Asia is not only viable, but like a super awesome option.
Yeah.
And I totally agree with the comments, like, you know, loads of, loads of YouTubers are in the Bahamas and the Caribbean, so it'd be good to see something different. And while that's true, I think we've never like made decisions based on what we want you guys to see. No offense. But we've always kind of just done what we think is interesting, like personally. Like we did the French canals and we were like, no one's gonna be interested in us going through the French canals, and you guys apparently loved it, and it was just the best experience. But we thought this is like a bit random. And same with like sailing Western France. Like there weren't any other YouTubers that I was aware of sailing Western France, but we just wanted to do it for ourselves. So we've always just done what we want to do. So this won't be any different. Kevin says the Suez Canal should be fun. Don't tempt me, Kevin.
No, so okay. So firstly, let me just butt in there. There's some. If you haven't liked this or clicked the little like button, could you please do so? Just because it's good for us. Thank you. Moving forward, what happens if we sail in Asia? What happens if we get to Singapore? What happens if we sail out of Vietnam? You know, and from our point of view, out of Vietnam, you then get east or west. It would seem likely at the moment that we will probably head west, and then we will head towards the Gulf of Thailand, Singapore, and then we have to make a choice. Do we then head across the Indian Ocean, follow Keith and Renee, you know, whatever? But there comes a point where you do have to then think, well, what happens about the canal, and what happens about how do we sail that now? How do we sail that now? We actually talked, we're actually doing the research on this with probably 50-50, like serious 50-50 just exploring options at the moment. So insurance, there's a 150-mile stretch of ocean that no one will insure you for because of the piracy risks, and that's off the coast of Somalia. There are ways around that do involve having armed guards on board, and we've actually had a quote for getting like
security
armed ex-special forces guys to
a friend of ours does this,
and like they'd send a team of 3 I know, but cool guns and stuff. Anyway, so we are exploring like the option of going to Suez, and it actually, look, put it this way, if it wasn't for the piracy risk, this is what we'd be doing. So I think if we sail out of Vietnam, and if we sail west past Singapore, so we're not shipping the boat to Europe, and we sail across the Indian Ocean, then my option 1 is Suez. Option 1 will be to get the boat into the Med going up through there. But, you know, don't forget, you've got Somalia to deal with. You've got Yemen to deal with. There is a corridor that you can sail, and there are a lot of there's a lot of royal naval presence there. But the Chinese Navy have got naval base there, and so there is a lot. But we have to obviously take into account primarily our safety and the safety of any crew we've got on board, because that will not be a good Patreon episode where they all get like bound up by Somalian pirates. So I think there's
like GoFundMe, like a kidnapping fund.
Just don't joke about it. This is going to be played back on CNN at some point in 5 years' time, when I'm kind of tied to the bonnet of a Toyota Land Cruiser with my ass hanging out. So exactly. Let's just stop all this, okay?
Okay. In seriousness, like that's something that may or may not happen. Like as in Suez Canal may or may not happen in a couple of years' time. But you know, we would, for sure, if we don't ship, then we would cruise Asia first. And also, the good thing about this part of the world is that, you know, for when we're wanting to leave and go explore somewhere else, then the Indian Ocean is probably like the most exciting option for us at the moment. But there's other options we can sail. Definitely get to like that part of the Pacific if we wanted to at certain times of year. Not the easiest option, but definitely doable. So yeah, lots of cool options, but certainly we're kind of talking more like midterm rather than short term now. So yeah. Okay, keep the questions coming. We'll we'll answer them as much or as best as we can. Apparently it's glitching a little bit.
Yeah, it does.
Is it glitching?
The internet here is actually, what I would say about Vietnam is, of all the Asian countries we've ever stayed in, the internet here is terrible. It is absolutely awful.
It's really bad, and
slow.
Hopefully we can
Nothing we can do about that. What we will do is, so let's just talk about progress of Ruby Rose 2 and the other 2 hulls. So we've got hull 1, 2, and 3. We're obviously hull 2. Let's have a little talk about 1. 1 is kind of like has all the furniture inserts in. That's all going really well. Engines are in, and they are doing a lot of work on the hull at the moment. They are also finishing off the deck. Now, the deck has been not delayed, but they are using the deck of hull 1 to template for all the other boats. So basically, they kind of got the deck mold, turned it upside down, and then they've spent the last 2 weeks building the templates to build the headliners, which is just about complete now. They have all but one of the headliner molds made, and they have actually made all the other headliners. They've actually infused all those already. So in another part of the factory, there's a lot of headliners ready to go in. And we did put a Patreon exclusive video out showing this the other day, what was going on. So that's done. And I expect that within the next 2 to 3 weeks, well, within the next week, I think they'll have finished what they need to do with that deck. And I think that I'm not sure when the deck goes on, because with Ruby Rose, it went on at a very different time to when the deck goes on. Because with Ruby Rose, it went on at a very different time to during the fit out. So when they built Ruby Rose, they put the bulkheads in, did a lot of the interior furniture, did a lot of the plumbing and furniture kind of like shapes. So I think we'll see the deck go on soon. I think that what will happen then is that they are going to start infusing the hardtop, and then that will go on. So hull 1 will have, I think, probably the next few weeks we'll have a deck on, and then they'll have a hardtop on. So that it's slightly more complicated with Ruby Rose 2 and the 1370 because the sail drives are reversed. So they have to take the sail drives off, spin them around, put them back on. They'll lower those engines in and get that done. So that is exactly what we will expect to see for 2. And hull 3 at the moment, they have the outer hulls. They've bonded those to the inner hull. And so that is all being finished off. So yeah, so that is the factory is absolutely buzzing, isn't it?
Yeah, it really is. And it's pretty exciting every time we go in. There's always something really interesting happening, and hopefully you guys are kind of finding it as interesting as we are. Yeah, I think that you are. Really positive comments on our videos these days, so that's really lovely to see, and we love those comments. They're kind of really kind of, I don't know, encouraging. Lots of comments in the live chat thing right now about our potential sailing plans and passage, people suggesting different passage plans for us. So yeah, loads of you guys are coming up with some cool ideas. Shane says, why not go to north to Taiwan, Japan, and the North Pacific, crossing to Alaska, and then down the US West Coast, across the Pacific again to Australia. The Med and Caribbean are boring. Nick would just complain way too much. So
yeah. So one question that we're getting asked a lot is the delivery date. We provisionally believe end of July, so about 4 months away. So that seems to be where it's going. It may be a week or 2 either side of that, but that's kind of what we're planning for. So we expect to be sailing in August. That's what we believe today. And that's based on the conversation we had last week with James. Obviously, things move around, but that's where we're looking at. So yeah, we've got April, May, June, July, 4 months. So 120 days we'll be on the water.
Yeah.
In theory.
I hope so. George, question, will the backrest in the cockpit be reversible? Yes.
I believe so they are. That's not 100%, but yeah.
Is it not?
They haven't finalized the design for the cockpit seat, I don't believe.
I thought that
but I'm pretty sure that it is, yes.
Okay, question by Jody. Why did you choose the 1370 over the 1600? The 1600 was never really an option for us. We never we loved the boat. We loved it. But don't forget, we are coming from a 38-foot monohull, and 1600 just seemed way too big. And we just didn't feel that we needed so much boat. We also crucially couldn't afford it, that's an expensive boat. And so that, kind of cross that out as an option straight away. But even if money budget wasn't an issue, then we wouldn't have bought the 1600. There's lots of 50-foot catamarans that are amazing, and none of them were what we were looking for.
Yeah.
And this is exactly why when we're doing, if you cast your mind back, the catamaran were what we were looking for.
Yeah.
And this is exactly why when we're doing, if you cast your mind back, the catamaran review series, we were kind of getting this mounting frustration that we didn't want a 50-foot or 52-foot catamaran, that plenty to choose from. That's not what we wanted. We wanted something that was kind of a bit smaller, a bit more manageable, certainly less expensive, but still high quality, good performance, and there just wasn't much high quality, good performance, and there just wasn't much, and there still isn't much on the market to cater to that. It's you kind of really looking at the production boats, and then a few others like the an option for a while, and the Outram 45, which is obviously well known by La Vagabond, but that is very performance orientated, and you don't get as much space inside, so we weren't really keen on that. There's a few others, of course, but it was really, we loved the Sea Winds, but the 42 or the 1260 was too small and the 1600 was too big. So that's why the 1370.
It does sound like the Three Little Bears. But just a couple of points. Teresa's absolutely correct. 45 is exactly what a couple or a small family need. 50 is too big for what we wanted, and costs go up in a non-linear fashion. That's point one. Linear fashion. That's point one. Point two, we have had input, and we continue to have input on a regular basis. And I actually think that I think as a whole package, that boat is unbeatable. Couple of points, just to kind of emphasize what I'm saying. Firstly, like putting a trifold door, putting a door that big into a 45-foot boat, essentially, it creates so much internal space for you to live in. And that is something which is absolutely fantastic. And we will have a whole amount of internal living space, which will be comparable to the 1600. So living room, I think, will be pretty similar. The big sacrifice that you make between the 1600 and the 1370 is waterline length. The 1600 is obviously much bigger, and you lose dagger boards. And those dagger boards take up internal space. So again, you lose dagger boards. I get that. I understand that completely. See the point in not kind of being able to kind of put our designs in from the bottom up, and then kind of like seeing those come to fruition. Just as an example, the 1600, they released a new 1600, like a refreshed version called the Passage Maker, about a year ago, and the 1600 actually has a lot of the 1370 features now put into it, because the evolution of the 1600 is based on what they developed for the 1370.
Yeah. So a couple of extra questions that are coming through. Erwin says, do you both have Yachtmaster's certificates, and does it help with insurance? I'm considering it. Nick has his Yachtmaster Coastal.
Yeah, Yachtmaster Coastal.
And I've got my day skipper. I don't know whether my qualifications make any difference because I'm not the skipper. But anyway, we don't know. But anyway, we don't know because I just come back with a quote. So it doesn't.
Look, one of my best friends, or one of my good friends, is a Yachtmaster instructor, and honestly, I wouldn't trust him. I wouldn't trust him with a rubber duck in a bath. He's an absolute liability.
I do think that certificates make a difference when it comes to getting an insurance quote.
I don't know. We actually will ask this.
We don't know.
We're actually going to, once we've settled on our insurance, we will actually ask how much difference it makes. I think there's probably an algorithm which is based on experience, because contrarily, I also have friends that have got zero qualifications and they are master mariners.
Yeah. Okie dokie. Thanks Sam.
Sorry.
You're right.
Yeah, I just want to see that thing. Okay.
Okay. Maybe just.
I'm just turning it off. Yeah.
So Tommy says, how much slower is the 1370? I'm assuming compared to 1600, because it doesn't have dagger boards. It will be the waterline length that really dictates the speed, particularly downwind. I think that dagger boards, and Nick will jump in here, they are like particularly useful when it comes to pointing and when it comes to not making leeway.
Laurie, just gonna cut. So I've got a bit of digestive in my throat. Look, a couple of points. If you refer back to the episode we did with Antoine about dagger boards a couple of years ago, they are not the be-all and end-all when it comes to pointing ability. There is this myth that is perpetuated that if you want to point super high, you need to have dagger boards. It's not the case. Of course, dagger boards do affect pointing angle, but pointing angle is massively affected by other factors, including the hull profiles, the hull design. That needs to be really ascertained. So the loss of dagger boards, yes, it will affect pointing angle. I do not envisage it affecting the pointing angle that greatly because of the shape of the hulls. These are really fine profiles. Point one. Point two, the hull, the bottom of the hull on the 1370, if you look back to the first video we did with Shane, is to do with its kind of like a flat bottom and the way that the rocker has been designed. Now, it's a concept to put across, and I think Shane did a really good job of explaining the rocker. But essentially, the way that the boat flies through the water, or the boat will pass through the water, if you create smooth water and not disturbed water, it actually allows it to kind of the water. If you create smooth water and not disturbed water, it actually allows it to kind of glide slightly faster, and the shape of that rocker will create lift. And while it does not lift the boat out of the water, no one was suggesting it was going to plane, but if you create a little bit of lift, you do actually reduce the wetted surface, and that will increase the speed. So these are theoretical hazards that we would be able to cruise easily at 10 knots. I really don't think that's a problem. I talked to Shane about this a while back. He said cruising at 10 knots should be pretty damn easily achieved.
Well, we'll find out soon enough. And then, there's obviously a few comments about the balance 442, which is, I think they've just launched hull number 1. So it'd be really interesting to see kind of what kind of speeds or performance they get out of the balance 442 and how that might compare to the 1370. I think it'll be really hard to make a direct comparison, just because, like, unless someone sets up a balance in the Seawind 1370 to actually, draw a direct comparison in the same conditions with the same kind of crew and the same weight.
You'd have to match race
on board. Yeah.
You'd have to match race
on board. Yeah, exactly. You'd have to actually set up. But nonetheless, it will be interesting to see what kind of performance they get. And look, that's got dagger boards, and I expect that the 442, not that I've looked closely at the design, but you would expect that the sacrifices that you make for the dagger boards will kind of, mean that you are getting better pointing ability, because otherwise, what's the point of them? And you've just lost all this internal space. As Nick said, for what we're trying to do with the boat, the dagger boards aren't a deal breaker.
Yeah.
So, okay, let's move on. Jackson Balance published a white paper on the dagger board situation.
The other thing about dagger boards, and we have a friend who has a Katana 471, and she is ex-America's Cup. She's also an Olympic sailor. Windsurfer. She won silver at the Olympics in windsurfing. So this woman knows a shit ton about how to sail a boat. And what she has said, and they live on board, I think they do. So hello, Annie and Eric, we met them a couple of 3 times while we were sailing the Caribbean. They are pretty advanced, competent sailors. And what she has said is that dagger boards can be as much a hindrance as a help unless you know what you're doing with them. It's a little bit, it's like buying a really, really high-end motorbike or sports car and not understanding them. You need to use them and work them. They are not fire and forget, where you just drop them in the water and you're like, oh, I got dagger boards, off we go. You have to tweak them. It is all there. It's a racing boat. that they're essentially, it's not, it's a racing boat. That they're essentially, it's not just a cruising boat. So you have to adjust, have one dagger board up, one down, change them both, and even they smashed one. They forgot that they had the dagger boards down, and they sheared one off over a reef. So the whole, but it's one racing feature, and there are secondary benefits of dagger boards that are not simply racing. Holding the boat in the water slightly better, not tripping down waves. I get all of this, but I am not sure that your average cruiser, and that's essentially what we are. We're average performance cruisers. We are not racers. Will get the benefit from dagger boards that you need. It's a little bit like if you've ever been in a Porsche, and when you buy a Porsche, and my brother-in-law has one of these, our brother-in-law has one of these, you can spend an inordinate amount of money on Porsche, on getting a little, it's like $1,000, but no one does laps in a Porsche Macan because it's a POS. But nonetheless, the point about it all is that I'm not sure that even if we had them, we'd get the right use out of them. Does that make sense to you all?
We'll never know because
we don't have them.
We don't have them, so we'll never know. Maybe in the future, one day we'll, in 10 years, we'll get a cat with dagger boards because we'll want a new challenge. But I don't know.
I'll get an RV and a beer gut.
There was a question. Timothy Painter says, if Seawind was not your partner, would you still choose them?
Yep, 100%.
The thing is that we chose Seawind as one of the boat shows. Can't remember, a boat show in 2019. And then about 4 months later, we went to Annapolis and we saw the 1260. And, between the 1600 and the 1260, we were really impressed. And we loved the boats. We just thought they were both amazing for different reasons. And then, we happened to be in Thailand sailing. As you might recall, we did some episodes of us sailing Thailand, and Seawind invited us to Ho Chi Minh to have a look at the factory, which we obviously were happy to take. And while we were there, they said, look, here's like a concept that we're working on. It's actually beyond a concept. They designed it. So they gave us like a presentation of the 1370, and they said, this isn't public, but, we think that it would really suit you guys. And it was basically like, we just sat there and we were just absolutely gobsmacked. It was like someone had plucked our dream boat from our minds and just put it in front of us. And it was a no-brainer. We're like, there is just no decision to be made. That boat, the 1370, is our boat. We have to have that boat. And that was the first, that was it. That's all that had happened, and then everything else happened after that.
Yeah, and there was a lot of other things that came following that were to do with what input we wanted, just because I keep banging on this. We're not naval architects. I have no idea how to design a hull, but there are people that do design these things that are far better qualified, and it's a Francois Perrault design.
Patrons about the small kind of details that crop up inevitably, and we are able to provide one perspective, and it's a perspective that comes from living on board a long time and sailing a lot of miles, and it's not like every sailor will have their own opinion. It's just one perspective, but I think that it is very valuable to the team while as they're trying to kind of problem solve and make decisions on these tiny details. So we're able to contribute.
I think on a couple more final points about would we have still chosen Seawind, and then I'm just going to try and expand that question to would we still choose them now, which I think is probably a loaded question, because I probably, even if I didn't like Seawind, I probably couldn't say I wouldn't. But anyway, look, the two guys that are running essentially the Seawind 1370 production, Danny and James, I talked to them off camera and on camera about some pretty crazy levels of detail, and those two are abject perfectionists, and I have absolutely zero qualms about this boat. Literally the level of detail and workmanship that they are putting into these boats is insane. If I had to the manufacturer, which we get asked a lot, but if it wasn't Seawind, who would you have gone with? Probably Ultraman. That's because I guess the whole thing about this, you have to look at a boat from what brings you to put a deposit down on a boat or to buy a boat or to invest in a boat. And a couple of things. We lived on Ruby Rose for 7 years. Before that, we had a Hans 320. We then seem to overlook pretty regularly when they are looking to buy a boat is how involved the manufacturer is in after sales, in warranty issues, and in just helping the crews of the boats that they have sold. So I'm going to give you some examples. Like Uchime, super involved in the owners as they take their boats and take delivery. So I'm not just going to continually bang on about Seawind. Other manufacturers that we have dealt with that will remain nameless, because I'm not saying positive things about them, literally it's just fire and forget. They're like, oh, you bought the boat, off you go. Even more so potentially if you buy a boat through a dealer where people do not sell direct, like you can't buy direct. So I'm not mentioning any brands, but the whole thing about this, and I've read this a lot of times on the internet, if brand X sells boats through 6 or 7 different dealers, then the quality of aftercare that you get actually comes down to the quality of the dealer, not the quality of the manufacturer. So I always like being at a deal direct. Point 2. Point 3, we have filmed, and we've got these episodes to put out, an episode about crash bulkheads, where a Seawind ripped. They were sailing mid-Pacific, and it's coming out. It's a really interesting episode. They ripped the front of the boat off. They hit something, and they went through this whole process of trying to save their boat from founding. And they, really super interesting story, where literally you get knocked off your feet by a collision, and then you go to find out that you've lost the front of your boat. One thing that I think that was really interesting in that whole conversation is that one of the things they did when they realized that they weren't taking on the other manufacturers would give their clients the same level of access to them, obviously in an emergency. Like every single manufacturer would jump in to help. That's a given. But how quickly would you be able to get hold of them? And that, I think, is important. So aftercare and after sales and all, I said, I'm not the only companies that I really know that we've dealt with well and have talked actually with brokers and owners about aftercare. I know that Seawind do a fantastic job. I know that Uchime do a fantastic job. I know that Antares do a fantastic job. And those are the only 3 that I know about. I'm not saying that there aren't other positives in there, but it is something that you have to consider. And honestly, the best way I would go about researching this, if you are in the market to buy a boat, is go onto the owners forums. Go onto the Antares, go onto the Seawind, go onto the Uchime, go onto the Fontaine Pajot, the Leopards, the Lagoons. See what the owners say.
Okay, so big thank you to Cecil.
Thanks,
much
Cecil.
appreciated. So let's move on to some more questions. There's an interesting question here from Christopher Hutchings, who I think has asked a few questions that we've missed, so I'm sorry about that. Question: performance is great, but as a couple, isn't it more important that we have a comfortable boat? I don't think that it's true that it's a clear payoff between performance and comfort. And I think that there's a lot of kind of elements of the design of a performance-oriented boat, like the 1370, that make the sailing experience more comfortable. And the other thing is that there's no guarantee that a boat performance-orientated, let's just say like a lagoon, for example, I don't think anyone can argue that a lagoon is built for performance. There's no guarantee that they're comfortable either. In fact, I think that in many conditions, sailing a lagoon will be far less comfortable. And like you have to kind of define what comfort is. We're talking, I guess, about things like hull slap, like waves slamming up against the bridge deck as you're sailing along, the boat like rocking. What do you call
Yawing,
it?
The yaw and the pitch.
Yaw and the pitch. And a lot of the elements that create a performance boat will deal with those. Will minimize the effects of those. So, for example, keeping the weight down low. So you look at like a Lagoon 50 or whatever they are with the fly bridge. They are not going to be comfortable because there's so much weight up high. So you're going to have a really that's going to massively impact upon how the boat kind of moves in.
Can you just finish by saying this is your opinion? It's opinion piece, so we don't get sued by Lagoon.
Okay, well, if they can prove that anything I said is incorrect, then they're welcome to. But it's true. So you look at kind of Seawind, for example, and any other performance boat. I mean, gunboat. Not that we're kind of in the same league as gunboat when it comes to performance. True. So you look at kind of Seawind, for example, and Outremer and any other performance boat. I mean, gunboat. Not that we're kind of in the same league as gunboat to performance, but the weight's all kept down low. The way that the hull is designed, as Nick was explaining before, ensures that like the water is like there's no kind of turbulent water being created as the boat moves through the water. So like the hydrodynamics are kind of considered in the design of the hull. That creates a more comfortable sailing experience, obviously, and performance. And the way that the bridge deck is designed and, kind of the bridge deck height is also taken into consideration. And also people, when they buy a performance catamaran, tend to think about not weighing it down. So the weight, hopefully, is kept lower because people aren't like putting loads of stuff on it. Whereas when you buy a Lagoon, you don't really think about the weight so much, or at least many couples probably don't, many owners probably don't. And maybe the temptation is to fill that amazing storage space with stuff. And so you end up with a boat that's quite heavily laden, and that affects performance as well. So I don't think it's true that a performance boat is uncomfortable and a non-performance boat is comfortable. I think that's false.
Yep.
Although I'll quickly just mention that obviously if you're doing like 20 knots, then I don't think that you can make that a comfortable experience.
Well, and what I was about to say is that I think that one thing that does need to be considered is what is the comfort when performance is being achieved.
Yeah.
Because, and I just think back to Ruby Rose, which obviously was a monohull and obviously was a medium displacement 40-foot cruiser. She was comfortable in a groove at about 6.5 knots. That was when it wasn't even waterline speed. Waterline speed, if you work on the, the square root, is it 2.3 times the square root of the waterline length? She should have been able to achieve a hull speed of 8 knots easily. However, the whole point about this is that once she got past about 7 knots, she became uncomfortable. And she was, just because the boat just she just didn't perform well. So if you take a boat that is performance oriented, you will find that as you get into kind of like arbitrarily on a 45-foot, 9 knots, 10 knots, 11 knots, 12 knots, you are going to find that the comfort stays for longer. If you watch these mad buggers that kind of do the Vendée Ocean Race or, the Hugo Boss things, they are like, the Hugo Boss things, they are like caning across at 26, 27 knots and they're miserable. Well, then it's not comfort. So there is a balance between performance and comfort.
And as Erwin has just pointed out, which I was thinking as well, you can always, like he says, you can always throttle back a performance boat. So you can always reduce sail and try and slow the boat down, which obviously, you don't have that, like you can't increase your performance on a non-performance boat. Yeah.
So I think that's where we are with this, that there is a balance between performance and comfort, but it's not as simple as either or. There is a whole like gray area where you're getting into performance figures for a boat of that length, but you are still retaining comfort.
And I think that with the newer like designs coming out, that is even more true. I think that maybe 20 years ago, catamaran design wasn't what it is now. They've really kind of changed a lot, unlike say monohull design, for example, which kind of has, my understanding is it's kind of remained like fundamentally the same for a long time. But now with performance cruiser catamarans becoming more popular, there's definitely like, progress being made on the design.
Yeah, and I think that's something that Terysa's just touched upon, which is not to be underestimated, is that you lot that are watching, like you have had a significant effect on the market. You have. Because, La Vagabond, 45-foot Buchaman. And then people are starting to understand that you can't just buy this big old lump and fill it full of your stuff and expect it to perform. So the market is shifting towards performance boats. And it's not, as I said, it's not performance or cruising. There is a sliding scale. And the fact that Seawind have sold 84 of these boats with reduced internal storage compared to a 45-foot cruiser, and people are now willing to go, actually, you know what? I want a boat that actually sails. I want to get enjoyment out of this and not just fill it full of stuff and having a floating condo. And the fact that they can do this is unprecedented. And people, I think Seawind are pretty damn lucky and clever, or lucky and clever in some, that they've literally understood the market, that people are willing to sacrifice volume for speed or volume for performance and actually do some sailing. It's never been done before. I understand that, I always look at boat sales figures, and I remember them talking around saying that when the Fontaine Pajot 45 Elba was released, or the 42 Astrea, I can't remember which one, they sold 120 boats off plan, which was unprecedented.
They're all going to charter.
So there was a big charter market, and there was also post Irma, I believe.
Yeah.
So there was a whole gap in the market. For Seawind to sell 84 boats off spec, it shows that people absolutely understood this need. Now, just one question I just want to ask you all, because there's a lot of you watching. There's 400 people of you watching. Can anyone tell me, and I don't know the answer, it's not a loaded question, how many 442s have been sold or pre-ordered? I don't know. I don't know how many Balance 442s have been sold. So it would be interesting to see boats that were launched or announced at similar times, where the 442 has been now dropped, or announced at similar times where the 442 has been now dropped in the water 4 months behind or 3 months behind the 1370. How many 442s have been sold? Same price, similar price, like within 10-15% of the price difference. So if anyone knows, or actually can message us anyway if you don't know the answer now, I'm just interested to know.
Albert says, sorry, why not a trimaran? Albert, I would ask why a trimaran.
No, okay, but I say, so this is why I'm going to answer this. There comes a point where...
Keep it quick, babe. Sorry.
I'm just going to not do that because no one...
We've just got a lot of questions.
Okay. Firstly, because spaces, you really need outer hulls that... And if you look at the Neil 45, the Neil 47, those outer hulls don't have the space for meaningful living. So that's really why.
Yeah, I would say a trimaran isn't 3 hulls, it's 1 hull.
And 2 outriggers. Yeah.
And that's a better way of thinking about it. And, trimarans are obviously more geared towards performance. There's not many cruising trimarans on the market, but Neil are trying to do that. They're trying to kind of create a cruiser out of a trimaran. But, as I think we've discussed, we want performance, but we also want to live on the thing and be really comfortable, and it's our home.
And if you look at, the big rapidos that, Elena are planning, those, once you get to 60 foot, then you've got livable space in the outer hulls, but that's just not our jam.
Yeah, no, it's not.
No.
Stephen, are you getting twin helms or a single helm on 1370?
Twin.
It's the design is twin helms.
Yep.
It's exactly like the 12 we sailed last year in Australia.
Yep, twin helms.
Stephen, when you go to register Ruby Rose 2, will you be registering it in the UK? Do you have to take delivery in the UK for that to happen, or can you register it in London but take delivery in Vietnam?
You can register a boat under any flag that you want. There are different complexities according to flag registration, and we're just exploring that at the moment. Where she'll be flag registered. And no, you don't have to take delivery. So you can register a boat you can have an Australian flag boat and take delivery on Vietnam. You can have a Ghanaian flag boat and register it and take delivery of it in Canada. The two don't have to be, you haven't got to do that.
Yeah. Richard says, why don't you cruise for Ruby Rose 1 while it's being done?
Do you know what? Actually, this is unfortunately Ruby Rose 1 is back up for sale again. So they never. I kind of like I really wanted them to kind of take it, and I know they had really cool plans, and I'm kind of like I'm sorry that they've changed those plans, but plans do change. So Ruby Rose 1 is actually up for sale somewhere in the UK.
Yeah, if anyone wants a really awesome Sudley 38, then
and we have no dog in this fight. She's just an awesome boat.
Yeah. It was a bit of a shame. But anyway, hopefully she gets a new owner soon. Okay, so ask any questions that you have that we haven't answered yet. We did miss a load kind of in the middle there that I think we didn't get to, and I don't want to scroll back because I'll lose my spot. So let us know if you have any other burning questions. Otherwise, what other updates do we have?
Oh, nothing really. I think, it's getting to the point where, from our point of view, we first saw the Seawind 1370 as a plan in November 2019. We're now, in April 2022, and we are getting this boat in about 4 months. So it is really getting to the very, very end of it. As we said on the patron Zoom chat the other day, talking to James, who is a production manager for the 1370, we are just about at the point, or we will be in the next week or so, where like stage 1 of the construction of our boat is complete. The hulls are complete, the deck will be complete, and then we move to fit out. So it's literally the fitting out, which is going to be where a different team of people kind of take over, where, plumbing, electrics. Once the deck's on, all the carpentry can start to go in. No idea what order it will go in on, but we'll be filming all this. So yeah, we're moving to a different stage. And although it's equally complicated in a different way, I believe that they have been manufacturing all these parts in anticipation. So yeah, that's another thing that we kind of do need to. And yeah, as we mentioned at the very beginning of the feed, we will be looking to, do we sail out of Vietnam and across the Indian Ocean? Do we sail to Singapore and ship? Do we ship to Europe? And that is something that we are exploring, and we have to have answers in the next month or so.
Yeah. A few more questions have come through. So Roger asks, do you have fire suppression on board?
I don't think apart from fire extinguishers within the prerequisite distance from the engines, but I don't think there's an automatic fire extinguishing system in that. It's not required for engines that are that size. It's kind of like more something that occurs in bigger boats, but I don't think there's one as standard.
Do you have any idea what the current waiting time is for a 1370?
I think it's 5 years now, 5 or 6 years.
I'm not sure. It's quite a long time. Will we have a desalinator? Yes.
Yeah.
For sure.
Yeah. Don't know the brand yet. It's difficult to get answers from the companies that are making desalinators, but I will revert back to you on that.
When are you going into Thailand? Well, hopefully this year, but we don't know.
Yep.
To be determined. I think we kind of just half answered that anyway. Timothy, do you still recommend the FX3? Yes, definitely.
Great camera. Absolutely great camera.
We had the A7 III, and then Nick kind of went AWOL and came back with an FX3 body, and I was like, okay. And I wasn't like super excited about it because I'd like, you get quite attached to your cameras, or at least I do. But and it's a new piece of equipment to learn.
Also the other thing is we bought that FX3 because we were in talks with the Australian Tourist Board to make that video for them. So it really, like, at that point, we kind of like had to take the decision I had to make the decision to kind of like invest in a crazy expensive camera body, even though we hadn't been given the contract from the Australian Tourist Board. So from that point of view, it was a kind of hard gamble.
Yeah, well, I think that's why I was a bit iffy about it. I was like, geez.
Kyle asked, can we think about Billy and Sierra? Even if we did, I think it is absolutely for them to, we're not going to steal their thunder. So, Billy and Sierra have got news. They will share it with you in their good time, and we are not going to ever do anything to our friends that kind of like jump in front of news that they may have.
Is there any more or less danger flying a boat flagging a boat in one country than the other.
I think the old Somalian registered 1370 probably would well.
But otherwise, no, you can just register it anywhere. But obviously, if you then sail the boat into that country that you've registered it in, there's sometimes tax implications. So, for example, we have discussed registering the boat in Australia, but then if we sail the boat to Australia, which is not totally off the cards, obviously Australia's not too far away from here, then we would have to pay import tax when we get there. Whereas if we sail to Australia on a non-Australian registered boat, then we don't have to pay tax immediately. I think there's 3 years or something before you have to pay tax, and that's the case in most countries. You don't pay import tax every time you cruise somewhere, as long as you aren't importing the boat.
Richard asks a question, and I kind of because it's a question I can't really work out in the sentiment in which it's being asked. Is the 1370 a performance boat if it doesn't have dagger boards? It's subjective, isn't it? You could argue, is a Porsche 911 a performance car if it doesn't have a spoiler on it? As from our previous discussion, I have said this 100 times when we talked about this with the naval architect, dagger boards do not make a performance boat. The performance and the pointing angle, multifactorial hull shape, I believe, hull shape is the biggest determining factor as to whether a boat is performance or otherwise. Dagger boards are a cherry on the icing on a cake. So if you had two 1370s, one absolutely identical, let's just throw this theoretical thing out there. If you took two identical 1370s, one had dagger boards and one had mini keels, and if you did a race, if you raced them both, so match race, same weight, same level of experience of the crew, who would win? Which boat would win? On around the Cairns race, dagger boards, every single time, absolutely every single time. That's a given. Cross an ocean, downwind, probably be exactly the same, because downwind doesn't make a damn bit of difference. If you took inexperienced crews, and I want to say inexperienced, if you took, say, Terysa and I, and then Terysa and I, so we put dagger board, one dagger board boat, mini keel boat, probably the mini keel would win. Because, as I keep saying, dagger boards, you need to know what you're doing, and if you don't know what you're doing, you actually create a problem. So I think the whole thing about, is a boat without dagger boards a performance cruiser? Yeah, of course it is. Is it as much of a performance cruiser as one with dagger boards? On paper, no. But this boat is not designed to go around the Cairns. It is designed to go downwind and across oceans. And that is when you're going to see a performance cruiser. Yeah.
Okay. Stephen says, did you see the barefoot doctors last video about the cost of extras they have on their Leopard 45 that they are getting? The costs are enormous for extras. Yeah, it's always expensive. How much sailing will you be doing in Vietnam? Asked Dusty. If we take delivery here, then we can't do any sailing here because there are tax implications for keeping your boat in Vietnam. We essentially have to take and sail out of the country, and we don't have much time. That's
we're going to be out in 2 weeks, I think.
Yeah. It's just a weird quirk of the Vietnamese tax system or whatever. Michelle says, I just wanted to say I love these live streams. Sorry, I missed most of it. We're out drinking in our new home.
Cool.
That just sounds bloody amazing, Michelle.
Good on you.
Enjoy. I don't know whether you mean a new floating home or a new land home, but either way, that just sounds really fun.
Are we heading off? I think we've answered enough of your questions.
I'll just
anything else? Anyone? Any final?
I think we're good.
Yeah, that'd be good. So listen, great live feed. Hope you enjoyed that. Give us a like. Give us some crazy, amazing boat building stuff coming up, and yeah, 4 and a bit months, we should be. So it's getting very, very, very close.
Oh, I just wanted to say, sorry, there was something I wanted to say, which is Paul Corrigan.